Can I have a romantic relationship in early sobriety? Oh man, okay. I'm going to answer this one. Buckle up. I think one of the hardest things for us to do as adults is romantic relationships. Am I right? Who here has struggled with romantic relationships? I know I did. My romantic relationship history for a long time was a train wreck. It was just bad. I picked the wrong people. I got in toxic relationships. I lost myself. I compromised my values. It was a roller coaster of emotions. I had to work really hard on myself to become somebody who was in a fit emotional state to have a romantic relationship. It didn't just happen. And there's a lot more I can say about that, and I'll probably do another video about it, but I want to talk about dating in very early sobriety. There is a good kind of general rule that we talk about in recovery circles about waiting a year. And I think it's honestly pretty good advice. You know, when those romantic feelings are activated, there's no switching them off. So it can be very difficult if you are feeling that intense attraction to someone, but there's usually a lot of other stuff going on as well. And there are so many pitfalls in dating. And here's really the number one reason. You know, we all know what it's like to have romantic attraction, right? It's intoxicating, right? We become consumed with thinking about that person, right? Have you been there? I know I have multiple times. And all of that can trigger addictive behaviors because we become consumed with a new person. And we're becoming consumed with a new person instead of a drug, right? Intoxicating is the right word. There's literally a chemical reaction happening. And we don't think about anything else. We don't think about what we need to do for our sobriety. We can't think straight. And we don't always make great decisions. It's almost like being drunk, right? Like making a decision when you're drunk, like we can make some really bad decisions. When we are consumed and intoxicated with a new person, we can rationalize to ourselves all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, I've heard it. I've had people meet someone and 30 days later, they're moving to a new country, or they're moving across the country, or they quit their job, or left their family, or like just we don't make good decisions. And I also think this is what's really intoxicating about romantic relationships. And this was my pattern. I thought the other person was the answer to everything. I thought that meeting the one was the solution. And once I had the one in my life, all would be well. I would just be happy and everything would be wonderful. And it's really, really unhealthy to focus all your energy and time and thoughts on another person in that way, because what you're doing is you're setting them up to be your salvation, and that will destroy a romantic relationship quicker than anything, because they are not your salvation. They're just a human being. So what happens is, when we feel like that towards another person romantically, there is an enormous weight of expectations that goes with it. And those expectations will crush the relationship and crush the person. Who knows what I'm talking about? Let me know below. I know a lot about this because I've lived it and I've experienced it. And I've worked with so many people who've gone through this. So when we're early in sobriety, in this first year, we may not have good foundations, right? What we're working towards is making sure we have a community, people that we can be real and vulnerable with, that we have obligations, that we are working on ourselves, right? That we are really trying to understand who we are, why we have the patterns we do, why we behaved in certain ways. Like there's a lot of emotional work that needs to happen. This is the emotional sobriety bit, right? Stopping drinking. Sobriety is 10% not drinking alcohol, 90% emotional sobriety. And that emotional sobriety, the heavy lift of that is in the first couple of years. So having a romantic partner, it can just distract from all of that. It consumes us so much that we just don't do that. Now, again, I've seen this dating in early sobriety because there's risk involved, right? There is so much risk involved in dating and romantic behavior. There is a risk of rejection. There is risk of, well, you're just not on the same page, right? This person wants this and this person wants that, right? And all of those things can facilitate intense feelings of depression, anxiety, loneliness, abandonment. If you have any kind of abandonment issues, they are going to be triggered. You know, what if you meet someone and you think they're the one and you want to spend all your time with them and they're just maybe interested in dating, not really interested in something serious? It can trigger an avalanche of really difficult feelings. And if you haven't developed ways to deal with your feelings yet, which is the emotional sobriety bit, that's going to be very, very hard. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, don't date. Like, you're adults, right? You've got to make the right decision. But there's a lot. I wouldn't go looking for it, right? I wouldn't go looking for it right out of the gate. I would focus on having a relationship with yourself and building connections with other people, like creating this foundation so that you can become somebody that other people want to date. Because here's the other thing. We will do this with romantic relationships. We look to the other person to fill us up. They are our salvation, our savior. They are everything. And it makes us really needy. And neediness is really unattractive. People, they're not going to want to have a relationship with you if you're needy, because you're like a starving person going to another person and begging that they feed you, right? The other person just intrinsically kind of knows that you want more from them than they're capable of giving, and it scares people, and they will start doing that with you. Have you experienced it? I know I experienced it. That's who I was. I was so needy. And all of this, the thing about romantic relationships, it triggers your unresolved issues from your family of origin. It just does. So what I triggered was the abandonment by my father and my emotionally unavailable mother. I would get triggered all the time. I would just create romantic relationships that gave me that huge, like, intoxicating feeling, and then I'd be abandoned. And I would have these crushing feelings that were historical for me, that went back to childhood. That is the work of emotional sobriety I had to do before I was able to have a successful romantic relationship. Now, I didn't drink, but it took me to some really dark, scary places because I just didn't have the tools. So I want you to know all of this before going in, right? I want you to know all of this if you are in early sobriety thinking about dating, or you've had these experiences. I've seen so many people relapse on a romantic relationship ending when they were in early sobriety. I've seen so many people relapse because we don't know how to cope. We don't know how to cope with all of those big, intense feelings. So and it crushes us, and our brain defaults back to the one thing that we know will take away all of those feelings in the instant. You know, it's going to distract you from your main goal of discovering who you really are as a sober person. So approach with caution. Let me know what you think in the comments below.